All right, yes, I am Ian Patton. Pleasure to be with you here today at LVNA here in Lakewood Village. I want to thank the board of LVNA, Khalil, and the entire board. It's great to be here because I have a lot of friends in Lakewood Village, a lot of folks I know who are multi-generational, and it's a wonderful community. I come from just next door in Bixby Knolls. That's where I'm born and raised. I am a third-generation Long Beach resident, and I am really shaped to a large degree by my heritage in this city. My grandfather, on my dad's side, was a sailor at the Long Beach Naval Shipyard, the Long Beach Naval Base. And on the other side, my mother's side, I am the son of immigrants who came to this country from Europe after World War II, survived the war. My grandmother was an Auschwitz survivor. They came, they had nothing. It was a classic immigrant story where everything they earned the hard way. No education, working with his hands. My grandfather is a house painter. And I am the son of a school teacher and an attorney, and I have always lived in Long Beach. And I'm really somebody who, I feel like this city has so much potential. It's still a wonderful place, but we see the quality of life that I grew up with here in Long Beach beginning to erode. And so I really stepped forward to get involved in public service and public policy when I co-founded the Long Beach Reform Coalition 4 years ago, because I wanted to understand why we were not getting as much as we got before. And what I realized is that it's the special interests. It's those powerful interests downtown that are taking our tax money and diverting it away from our parks, from our streets, from our needed services, from our police. And the more I got deeply involved in that, the more I realized we needed change. And as someone who was a small business owner and a former congressional staffer, I know how to do that, and I will.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Kerr, and thank you for having us and having this forum tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. So I'll go ahead and start with the first question, and Linda will go first with the answer, and then we'll rotate in this direction. First question. In 2016, Measure A promised improved public safety infrastructure, reopening of community hospital, and a rainy day fund. How do you feel Long Beach has done on these goals, and how do you plan to ensure these funds are used optimally to achieve these goals?
Well, Measure A has been a challenge, hasn't it? We haven't met the goals that we were meant to with the community, especially with the community hospital. It was a risk the city, I believe, shouldn't have taken, and it's very unfortunate that we are now in a major bind in regards to the community hospital. It was something that I know that residents wanted deeply, and I think the city council listened to them and did what they thought was right. It is something that still needs to be corrected and investigated further, because it may end up being a surplus housing, which we're in dire need of. However, I think there are some things that we can definitely rectify with Measure A, and I hope to be able to do that within the council.
Measure A is a shell game. It is a joke, and it should be offensive to every resident of the city. Now, that should be no surprise coming from the person who has led for the last 4 years the leading organization which has opposed Measure A. But if we go back to the history of Measure A, the original Measure A in 2016 was sold to us on false premises. We were sent mailers to our mailboxes promising us a restoration of the 200 officers that we are down in this city. We had over 1,000 officers in the 1990s. We're down to about 800 now. After Measure A, we're still at about 800. It was not honest. It promised to fix our infrastructure. One of our board members, Corliss Lee, when it came back on the ballot in 2020, did the research on that. She spoke to John Gross, the financial manager of the city. She got the details, and she found out that in fact our infrastructure net spending after Measure A in some years actually went down. But we label all these projects around the city brought to you by Measure A. That's a form of using your tax dollars to sell you a lie. And that lie was to bring it back on the ballot and get it passed yet again to take away the sunset so it will become an infinite tax for all time. When it passed, it tied us with Chicago as the highest sales tax city in the nation. Now think about that. Why would Long Beach have to have the highest sales tax, which is the worst kind of tax? It's a regressive tax, a tax on poverty, basically, basic goods and necessities. Why would Long Beach have to take such a desperate measure when we have a port, we have an airport, we have oil under the ground, we have hospitality, hotel tax, we have so many sources of revenue in this city. We're practically the Saudi Arabia of cities, and yet we can't pay for basic things like infrastructure without the highest tax. Ask yourself that question, and you'll understand why we formed the Long Beach Reform Coalition.
Thank you. Pardon me, I've got laryngitis. I've been doing a lot of walking and talking. So Measure A isn't enough. And all of our surrounding cities have now matched that tax rate to be able to do the same kind of things that we have done with Measure A. It has provided almost $160 million in complete or in progress infrastructure dollars. It is not enough. We know that. It is not enough to restore 200 officers. In fact, it barely added more than a dozen. So we know that there's more to do around the budget. And at the same time, our oil revenue tanked. So we are an oil-dependent city, which makes our budget fluctuate. So we need to be mindful that as we are planning our budgets moving forward, that we're doing so in a strategic way. As a school board member, we are required to present a 3-year budget to the state. We can't just say, hey, we can pay our bills this year, we're good. We have to look 3 years into the future and make projections. So my experience is making strategic decisions into the future around budgeting so that we don't fall off cliffs when certain revenues tank. So in addition to the nearly $78 million in citywide spending on mobility and street improvement, specific to District 5, Measure A has spent $400,000 at Cherry Park, $320,000 at Hartwell Park on a turf field, $1 million to Los Cerritos Park and added $100,000 to the sports courts, $1 million to Rancho Los Cerritos, $100,000 to Dana Branch, the Expo Center, Fire Station 9, and improvements at Hartwell. So we have work to do, but we can't have the things that we want to have a world-class city without the dollars to do so. So we can all dream big into the future of the things that we want, but we have to budget responsibly with the dollars that we have moving into the future.
Wow, we've heard a lot about Measure A today, right? Well, it kind of comes back full circle as to what I talked about in my opening. We need to be held accountable. Those mailers, like Ian said, came to our homes. Did we educate ourselves enough? I don't know. Did we get fooled? I don't know. I am running, though, to find out those answers. Where is that money? Where are the officers that were promised, supposedly? I hear that they were promised. I hear that they were not promised. Well, we need some transparency. We need to ask the questions. You need to be involved. You need to come to your council person. If I am sitting at that table, I will be that representative for you. I will ask those tough questions. I will make sure to find out where that money is, where it has gone, and why it wasn't used properly. And at that point, then we need to go ahead and try to figure out a comprehensive plan, like Megan was saying, and be fiscally responsible with the money that we have allotted for different things that they told you was supposed to be used for. We need basic things: streets, tree trimming, public safety. Again, these are things a city should be providing you. This should not be coming out of extra. This should be here already for you. You live here, you've worked here. Your children are growing up here. Why do we have to keep coming after you? We should be able to handle this as a city, and I'm going to find out why we haven't and come to some sort of comprehensive plan with the other council members. And for District 5, I'm going to inquire and find out. Let's promise, make those promises that you're saying you're going to make, and let's keep those promises that you're saying. Do not sit here and tell the constituents or the community members one thing. They want their officers on the street. Let's get them those officers so they can patrol the cities, so you can feel safe to come outside, to open your small business, to let your kids walk through those parks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question number 2. Historically, District 5 has been a north-south portion of East Long Beach with similar neighborhoods and concerns. Now that it is east-west with unique neighborhoods and issues, how will you assure that the needs of all areas will be met? And Ian, we start with you on this one.
Well, the thing about the new District 5, if you watch the redistricting process, it seemed to be what was left after they carved a number of other districts. And what they saw as the commonality is something that's true, which is that these are single-family zone neighborhoods. From Los Cerritos and Bixby Knolls through Cal Heights, all the way to South Dakota, Lakewood Village, Plaza, Carson Park. This whole area is actually very similar in terms of being post-World War II, low-key, peaceful, quiet neighborhood, single-family zone. And if we have a council person who's going to be a real advocate for protecting that quality of life, I think people will see that we are unified in this district. It really doesn't matter where the lines are. We have similar priorities and similar needs, and if we have a council person who's willing to have town hall meetings, actually reach out to folks, discuss issues so they're not a fait accompli that people are just presented with, as happens too often in this city. Or maybe there's a supposed community meeting, but nobody knows about it, nobody attends it, and then afterwards we're told, oh, well, it's your fault that you didn't know about it. Well, no, it's not your fault. It's the responsibility of the council person to reach out to all sides of the district, bring everyone together, make sure you're informed, and I think we need to not only do that, but if we're going to talk about something specific, we should have a council district office which is located directly in the center of the district, which actually means it should be here in Lakewood Village, either maybe in Norse Way or Viking Way. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I'm most proud of my 8 years on the school board is my ability to reach out to serve the entire community. So Long Beach Unified serves 4 cities: Long Beach, parts of Lakewood, Signal Hill, and Avalon. And when we operate, we don't operate as a District 1 person where I currently represent to North Long Beach. We have the hearts and we have all kids and families in mind across the district, because we have kids that may live in one area and go to school in another, so it requires a broader lens. I have been active and engaged with my community, more so than my predecessor on the school board. I attend neighborhood association meetings to answer questions about schools. I make myself available to PTA and community meetings as well. I am one of the most accessible electeds, I think, in the city, and have been doing that work for 8 years. In North Long Beach, they have a community leaders model, which I think would be really helpful here in the 5th District, where they get the leadership of all of the neighborhood associations, of which there are many in the 5th District, together on a quarterly basis to talk about not just their own neighborhood, but to hear what's happening across, so that those leaders can then go back to their associations and share what's happening across the city. And when we do that, we bring in school board members like School Board Member Diana Craighead, who is here, to talk about and be available to answer questions about the schools. We bring in potentially someone from Long Beach City College to answer those questions, as well as our city services. But that idea that we can share the knowledge that we all have with each other is important. We've had a lot of innovations around technology and connecting folks. We're on Zoom here tonight. So the ability to reach out to people has never been more available to us. And it takes someone with the initiative and the history of being able to do that on a regular basis to continue that work in this community. So we can talk about East and West, and we can talk about where we might be from, but we all know that we live and play across this 5th District and across the city. So you may live in Lakewood Village, but you head to First Fridays in Bixby Knolls. I'm in Bixby Knolls, and I was on Norseway for lunch yesterday. So taking advantage of that and innovating with the technology will be critical.
So in a time where technology is so predominant, where millennials don't even call each other on the phone anymore, They don't like that. You either text or you're on Zoom. And you're on Zoom and nobody puts, shows their face. They put a picture up. So that's not really connecting to me. I think that COVID-19 also made us a little isolated, and then we became homebodies. But now when people are going out and socializing a little more, I think that it's really important to have face-to-face as much as possible. I think, I know that my office would have open door hours for anybody to call in and talk to either myself or my staff if I'm in a meeting. I know that by talking to you out in at your homes, that I'm hearing that, your frustration when your council person doesn't respond to you, when you're calling someone and they don't say, you don't get a response. That's actually happened to me. So I want to do enough outreach so everybody knows that there is a newsletter available to each and every one of you by email. And I want you to know that I would be as accessible as I possibly could be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question number 3 I'll ask, and Megan will go first. Question is, Lakewood Village Neighborhood Association has tried to work with the city to provide cameras next to the street for crime prevention. And these are cameras near the curb, not front porch cameras. The association would pay for and monitor the cameras or individual homeowners, but the city's repeatedly rejected our offer. What are your feelings about this, and how would you approach this situation with the city?
Thank you. I think it's really important that we talk with our police department really candidly about what the concerns are in our individual neighborhoods. We have a new police chief and some new commanders. So bringing them into the conversation about how we keep folks safe is critical. I am concerned. I have cameras on my house as well, and they look out over the alley because I'm on a business corridor. They look out on the front door because that's what makes us feel safe in our house. But it is limited to the perimeter of our home. And so I would want to know the city's reasoning behind their concerns, because if it has to do with privacy or crossing the lines of privacy, I think that's something we seriously need to consider, that we don't put the city in legal jeopardy by doing things that infringe on other folks' right to come and go in our open neighborhoods. So I think it's a complicated conversation, one that I don't have all the details to the past conversations, but I would look forward to discussing with our law enforcement partners and with the association.
Coming from a law enforcement background, I do believe that cameras can be beneficial. Now, when it comes to community members, though, we are going to have different issues. Freedom, privacy. Some people are going to like it, some people are not going to like it. So that is something we are going to have to discuss. Lakewood Village, if that is something that they want, we'll have to meet with the community members, the constituents, the council members, law enforcement, and discuss that. Find out the details. Coming from law enforcement, I can have that relationship with the chief of police, with the officers, find out what the best locations are that maybe would not infringe on anyone's rights, if that's a concern. Maybe find out the best place and times that we can activate these cameras. Some people don't want Big Brother 24/7, I understand that. But again, just to let you know, on the law enforcement side, it is beneficial to help solve crimes, to complete investigations. We do have our own neighborhood watch, next door neighbor, social media. A lot of people put their information out there from their Ring cameras, and it has helped. So we would have to discuss, I would have to talk to the community members. I can't make these decisions on my own. I do not live in Lakewood Village. I'm over here in South Dakota. So that would just be something that we would have to discuss behind closed doors, but be honest with the constituents and the community members as to either why we're going to do it or why we are not going to do it. Thank you.
I personally have cameras around my home, and I make sure that they do not encroach on my neighbor's privacy at all. I would also like to know why the city has rejected this in the past. It's something worth looking into. In the old days, you would have very grainy footage and you really couldn't make out who was doing what. But nowadays, technology is much better. And I understand safety and you're in your own home. You want to feel safe, you want to feel secure, and protect your property. And that's very necessary. As I said, I have cameras in my own home. But I understand if you pay for your own, you should be able to do with what you're paying for in your own area. But again, we have to be sure we don't cross that line where we're impeding on somebody else's rights and privacy. Thank you.
I'm going to answer this question in two ways. Number one, if this is what Lakewood Village wants, done. Period. It's what you're asking for. We have such a can't-do attitude in this city. We think of all the reasons why we can't do things, and this is really true downtown. But when you have the community saying, this is clearly something we need, we are concerned about public safety, it's really an extension of something I believe very strongly in, which is the broken windows theory of law enforcement. Being proactive, having enough police to do community-oriented policing, which means getting to know people, getting to know corridors, getting to know where are the hot spots. If Lakewood Village has already identified hot spots and they want this form of attention to it, which is similar to Neighborhood Watch, but even better, then we should have it. It should be a very simple answer. So that's number one. But number two is a larger issue. Are we valuing our residents, their opinions, our neighborhood associations, which are the voices of our residents? You're the expert in your own community. Who knows better than you? The police headquarters downtown, City Hall? No. You know. So we need to really value the input we're getting from residents, from their associations, and we need to support those associations. And in line with supporting neighborhood associations, I want to make an official declaration, something I am proposing, which is that we have a citywide strategic plan to support neighborhood associations in this city, to support the ones that exist and to foster the ones that don't exist. One of our board members created the Council of Neighborhood Organizations, and it's great to have them talking to each other, but they need support. They need dedicated staff support, basically a joint executive director, staff time, resources, and they need to be taken seriously.
I have to respond to what Ian just said. I don't believe that Long Beach is a city of no. I understand that you're concerned about your home and your property and your safety, and you should be. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I've learned accountability and responsibility for my own. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to impede on somebody else's privacy. If it's not necessary, then it's not necessary. To be able to take over somebody else's property or to look into somebody else's home by way of cameras, I don't think that's what this country's about, to be quite honest. And again, I don't believe Long Beach is a city of no. I think there's a common ground that we all have here, and we just need to work together to make things happen. Thank you.
Question number 4. The Queen Mary is projected to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to preserve its structure and move forward as an attraction and hotel. What are your thoughts on the Queen Mary? We start with Janine.
Well, the Queen Mary is beautiful, I will say. I've been here 21 years and I knew about it even before I lived in Long Beach. Unfortunately, I will say not any of us, at least not yet, have been the ones that are making those bad decisions about the Queen Mary. So I'm hoping that you hold your current council members, your city manager, your incumbents that are running again, accountable for what's happening with the Queen Mary. That is something that my children have gone to and thought it was just beautiful, and they were really excited about it. And now what has happened and why? How did we allow it to go down that way, and why isn't anyone being held accountable? Why are we talking about all this money that we've lost and nobody has solutions? I'm coming in for that reason, not just the Queen Mary, but to find solutions. We need to stop being a part of the problem, we need to stop talking about the problems, and we need to find a solution. A solution to the Queen Mary, I cannot tell you off the top of my head. I would definitely have to dig in and find out all the issues that's happened already, find out who's accountable, where's this money, what have we done so far, why have we allowed these bad decisions, and then we have to come to some sort of agreement as council members and make a comprehensive plan for it. I would talk to the constituents and the community members to find out exactly what they want. This is your city. Please remember, I will repeat this all night long. This is your city. You need to know what you want, and you need to hold people accountable for the Queen Mary. Again, I think it's beautiful, but what do you want us to do with it? I will find out what went wrong, and then I will come up with a plan for you.
This is another example of how things have gone really badly in Long Beach, unfortunately. We all love the Queen Mary. I think we've all been there. I haven't met anybody who hasn't been there actually in this neighborhood. There's no easy answer. It's going to cost a lot of money. And unfortunately, it's not going to go away. It costs as much to actually put it out to sea and sink it as it does to keep it. So if you're looking for an easy answer today, I'm very honest with you, I don't have that answer. It's going to take more work to actually get this functioning, maintained, and profitable. It's going to take a lot of work. Thank you.
The Queen Mary is iconic of the city of Long Beach in two very distinct ways. It's really the dichotomy of this city writ large. It is iconic in the sense that it is a ship that many of us love, that I grew up loving, going to after school, exploring. I love everything about it. But it's also iconic of the failures of the leadership of this city. It is iconic of the way we do business at City Hall, where everything is a superficial, optics-based solution. Meanwhile, right under the surface, the rot is getting worse and worse and worse. And ultimately, it's not the temporary politicians who end up holding the bag. It's us, the long-term residents and taxpayers. So with the Queen Mary, what we did is we kicked the can down the road for decades, yes, but never worse than we did in the last several years. When this city council brought on some transparent crooks running this company called Urban Commons, who had no background, no ability, no reason to believe whatsoever they could do what they were saying they were going to do, both for the ship, which was already in a horrible state, and for a fanciful shoreside development. So they promised us the world, and we accepted it because it papered over the problem for a little while. And now we're seeing what happens. When you fire the marine inspector, who was the whistleblower, who was telling us the truth, when you give more and more money to these transparent con artists, eventually it blows up in your face, and you have to deal with the consequences, and now it's something that could potentially cost us $500 million or $100 million just to fix it enough to tow it out to sea, just to be able to scuttle it. What an embarrassment. The only solution for that ship now, unfortunately, because of the choices made by our leaders, is that they're going to have to probably, if we don't get rescued by the federal government. Sorry.
Thank you. This is another one of those issues that we have to be thoughtful and strategic about. Many of us are nostalgic about the Queen Mary. For some, it carried their loved ones to our city. Others, it carried their loved ones during World War II. My brother worked on the Queen Mary as a young man, and I have a picture in my wedding album standing next to the Queen Mary. But right now, the projections don't look good. It just came out today that the preliminary results of the Harbor Department's investigations is it's going to be around $380 million. $380 million to right the situation that has been decades in the making. And I appreciate the work of the Harbor Department and the efforts to secure status at a national level, which could provide potentially some funding, but we know it's an uphill battle and it isn't nearly enough. So for me, I think we need to balance our sense of history and nostalgia with moving forward. And then we can't let the nostalgia have us make decisions that harm the future of our city. And we know we've got a lot of work to do. So in my experience as a board member, I've had to make hard decisions in budget times that not all the community always agreed with, but really looking at the needs of the community and our budget and making hard decisions. Again, it's going to be a complicated conversation that I look forward to continuing to have with you as your council member.
Okay, thank you. Question number 5. Homelessness is an increasing problem throughout the district and the city. What are your specific plans to address this issue? And Linda goes first.
When I speak to people at their homes, the first item that comes up is public safety. When I dig a little deeper, it's that people are afraid of homeless people. They're concerned about crime, and they equate it with homelessness. Now, there's a lot of reasons that people are homeless. Addiction, medical bankruptcy, mental illness, which is over 30% of people on the street that are mentally ill. PTSD, there's so many reasons. We should not have students living in the parking lot of our colleges. That's shameful, very shameful. I believe that this program that is currently in place, the REACH program, should be expanded and fully funded. These are licensed professionals that can do outreach to the homeless, offer them temporary and permanent housing, offer them resources for mental health, offer them all kinds of resources. It takes time. It takes building up their trust. It's not going to happen overnight. They've had some successes. It's happening in Newport Beach, in Denver, just to name a couple of other programs. But it's here in Long Beach, and it needs to be expanded and fully funded. Now, this program, if it's expanded and fully funded, can unburden our peace officers from going on those calls. They don't want those calls. They are not equipped to deal with, homeless people or mentally ill people, and they don't want those calls. I've talked to many peace officers, and that's what they've expressed to me. So that is one of the things that I'm very adamant about, and I would want to expand, as I've said. And thank you.
Just to finish very quickly my answer on the Queen Mary, the council is probably going to have no choice whatsoever but to go to the voters with a 2/3 threshold parcel tax to save the ship. And I'm very dubious that the taxpayers of this city are going to be willing to do that, unfortunately. With regard to homelessness, this is the crisis of the day. It is starting to spin out of control in the city. When I was growing up in Bixby Knolls, there were no homeless uptown. It was literally unthinkable. There were just some homeless down in Lincoln Park by the library. It was the sort of thing we thought about in a city like Santa Monica, San Francisco, LA, and now we're becoming those kinds of cities. We are becoming that kind of city here in Long Beach. And the reason is a theme that I will return to over and over again, which is not that we don't have the money, it's that the money is being misspent. We wasted tens of millions of dollars on a first ever city-owned homelessness shelter, which is in the worst location. It's practically on the border with Compton. It was put there as a political decision because that particular council person for the 9th District wanted it. And nobody in City Hall bothered to even call the former operator of that facility, the CEO of the rescue mission, Reverend Jim Lewis. But my organization did, and he told us they sold it at a $1 million loss because it was such a disaster. But it doesn't end there. After we spent millions more than they sold it for to buy it, we find out it has a pre-existing lease on it to grow cannabis. And that's why we can't actually use the building itself. And that's why it costs so much, because it's in a piece of land which is zoned for growing cannabis. It made no sense whatsoever, but to paper over it, they put modular units, so they can say that there are a few homeless people being served. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We know that the housing and homelessness crisis is both an immediate need and the direct result of long-term policy decisions that have been made for decades. We really have to attack it at both fronts. So for those folks who are currently unhoused, living in our parks, living on our riverbeds, in front of some of our businesses, that means having teams to go out to do the outreach that takes sometimes 10, 15, 20 different contacts with that person to get them in temporary shelter. That temporary shelter has to be accessible, meaning they need to be able to bring their belongings. They maybe need to be able to bring their pet because they don't want to leave those things behind. So we need to have them come in, get the resources that they need. That also means that we have to continue those resources so they can stay in housing, even if it's temporary up to a couple of months. After that, we need to continue to build permanent supportive housing, so once those folks are stable, there is a place for them then to go and live. Because as try as we might, once we've helped 10 people come out of homelessness, 20 more people have fallen into homelessness because of the crisis of the day. 500,000 people are about to fall into homelessness across LA County if they just lose their paycheck. So folks are unhoused because we have a housing crisis and because there's a shortage of places for them to live. There are contributing factors to that, but in order for them to get well and get treatment for those contributing factors, we need to build places for them to be that are not just temporary for 2 to 4 months or 6 to 8 months, but places that they can live and continue to be supported. So we have a multi-service center over off of Anaheim and the 710 freeway, and we have the homeless facility that's transitional that is up to 18 months, I believe, in North Long Beach, serving around 110 folks. That's helping. We need more of those. But we know they can be inaccessible, but that means they need to be in other parts of the city as well. The reality is that the homeless crisis is a responsibility of all of us, and we have to work together to identify places where folks can get the help that they need. Thank you.
So you heard from Linda that there are different types of homeless, and there are. Financially, some are struggling, they can't make it, so they end up on the street. You have the ones that do have the drug and chemical dependency, and you have the ones with mental illness. As a law enforcement sergeant, those are the people I deal with day in and day out. And with Ian, we heard misappropriation of funds. I will say, yeah, I'm sure that's true. The money that was allocated for homeless programs probably went somewhere else, or like he said, they misused them. And then we hear from Megan some programs that are in place. Well, if these programs are here, are they valid programs? Are they effective programs? As your council person, I'm gonna find out, because honestly, the homeless problem is getting worse. So if we have all of these issues, why aren't these programs working? Recently, last week, I went to the Heart of the City Award. And this is an award that people around the city receive because they want to help homeless veterans, homeless people that don't have the finances. And I think those are great programs. And the REACH program that Linda mentioned, that's a good program as well. But I'll tell you right now, law enforcement still needs to be involved. If a clinician shows up and this homeless person, unfortunately has a screwdriver and now is attacking the clinician and or the citizens around, the law enforcement officers still need to be a part of that. So we need to work in conjunction, we need to work together. But this is something that the city is acting like, oh, we should just get these REACH programs up and running in 2022. Why aren't they here already? Where has your money gone? Why can't we address these issues with these homeless programs? We need to find out what's going on. We need to help these people. They are human beings, yes, but they affect small business, community stakeholders. They can't open their businesses. And my time is up. Thank you.
Question number 6.
I used one of my rebuttals, if that's
We
okay.
have a rebuttal request.
Thank you. I just want to put another face on homelessness. So in the school district, so there are 2,000 or so homeless folks in Long Beach who are identified by our point-in-time count, which is standardized across the county and the state. In Long Beach Unified, we've identified over 4,000 students who are homeless because we have broadened our definition of what homelessness is in the school district. That means kids who are sleeping on couches of family members or friends or couch surfing around, because we understand that when a student is not stable, they can't learn. So we as a school district are putting funds in to make sure they have what they need in order to be successful in the classroom. So it isn't just folks experiencing mental illness or addiction issues. We have families that are struggling every single day, who are doing their best, who are on the verge of becoming unhoused, not in their car, and not on a friend's couch. So there is a spectrum of folks who are unhoused, and I think we need to be compassionate and remember that, because some of them are children.
I just wanted to add to my answer on homelessness. There are several things we need to do differently. When I did the homeless count a few months ago, I talked to a couple, a man and wife, who had some issues, but they had it together enough to actually make it to our multi-service center, euphemistically named. It's our homelessness service center, and it's in the worst location. It's on the other side of the 710 freeway and the river. You cannot walk to it. It has banker's hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And when they got there, the staff was so difficult, the paperwork was so, and the bureaucracy was so impenetrable, they gave up. I mean, it's heartbreaking. When the services are there, they're aware of Project Room Key, they're aware of the motel vouchers, and they can't access the services that we have because our city is really great at press releases and photo ops, but when it comes to the follow-through of actually providing these services, they drop the ball. We also need a regional joint powers
Thank you,
authority.
Ian.
Thank you.
I can see how we can run out of time when we're speaking about this issue because it's such a big issue for us all. And I'm glad to hear that this panel is very compassionate about the way that we are addressing this issue. It, there are neighbors, and when you think about the amount of rent that people have to pay, when we need over 26,000 units to be built, if not more. The median household income is $67,000. The median listing price of a home is $735,000. That's 11 times a household's income. 61% of Long Beach residents are renters. Rent burdened is when someone pays 30% or more of their income to rent. That takes away from food, clothing, health insurance if you can afford it, and there's my time. Thank you.
So to continue on, because this is a very important topic, we need a regional joint powers authority. This is something I've been talking about for years. Similar to the air quality management district, we need it to be multi-county because this is a regional problem. And there's a sort of a perverse disincentive to really go above and beyond as an individual city, because then cities are afraid that they're going to attract more homeless because they're providing more services. We're not doing that now in Long Beach, but that is the fear you hear about. So if we have regional coordination and we allocate the resources in a way which is equitable, but is also intelligent as far as where the cities that have the worst issues are, you're going to have an approach that makes sense, that is distributed, and that isn't just a political solution. So within this city boundary, these city politicians can take credit for this purported solution that doesn't actually solve anything. Another really important thing we have to do is pair it with enforcement,
Thank you, Ian.
because I don't believe you have a right to die on the street.
And we have one more request.
Well, I kind of knew that homelessness would bring out all our rebuttals. So, sad topic. Of course, I'm sure we know people that have been affected by homelessness. But I will say, coming from the law enforcement background, it's not as simple as offering the services. They don't want to go in because they can't do their drugs. They can't have their fun. They have to follow rules. So when we do bring them in, then they're just right back out because there's nothing to hold them there. So city officials need to support their law enforcement officers. Let them use the laws that are in the books so we can get the job done, as well as maybe step up our game and come up with a different plan. We might have to force people in. We can't just leave them on the street, like Ian said, to die. You wouldn't leave a family member sitting in their feces. And if you want to open a small business, you also don't want that in front of your door. Drugs, feces, drinking, prostitution, all of that comes with everything. But again, these are people. These are people, so we have to be humane with them and make a decision. Thank you.
Okay. We're talking compassion here. So I kind of take offense to saying you don't want that in front of your front door. I hope that you mean that you don't want to see people suffering on the street. I hope that's what you mean. And yes, officers do need to be involved in certain cases, but I don't believe that that's the first call that needs to be made when somebody's having a psychotic breakthrough. There, but for the grace of God, goes my sister who is mentally ill. Thank goodness we are able to take good care of her. But that's not everybody. Anybody can be a paycheck away, a job loss away from being on the streets. And we need to have more compassion and be realistic of how we treat our neighbors. Thank you.
And Janine, we have one more request.
Thank you, Linda, for letting me clarify. Yes, that is not the person, but it is the action. And we have to be realistic. I'm going to look at all of you in your face because most of the doors that I've knocked on, that is one of the issues. Small businesses, again, they cannot open the small business because of the drug addiction, because of the homelessness that is in front of their business. So we do have to be realistic. We can still be compassionate. I am. 24 years of law enforcement, that's all I do is deal with people differently, and I try to find out their backstory. I try to help them, and I give them the resources that are necessary, but I also have to be realistic, and we also want to feel safe walking down our streets. Thank you.
Well, good. Okay. On to question number 6. Lakewood Village is somewhat isolated from the city, as are several other neighborhoods throughout the district. What is your plan to communicate with constituents, foster dialogue throughout the district, and how will you ensure transparency in your engagement? Ian, you start on this one.
Well, the Long Beach Reform Coalition, my group, is all about transparency. That is one of our signature issues. It's in our mission statement, and we have found that is severely lacking in City Hall for many years now, whether it's making public records requests, and the city dragging its feet to disclose why they made certain decisions, or whether it's even following the Brown Act at City Council. We have a city that likes to dictate to the people. The people in the city are the resource. We saw this with Fire Station 9, where the city just made a decision to close the emergency dispatch for all of Los Cerritos and most of Bixby Knolls, with almost no notice. Even the neighboring council member whose district at the time was served by this, Fire Station 9, was blindsided by this. And then we had a town hall meeting about it at the expo, and it was packed. We haven't had a town hall meeting like that in a long time. And what we got out of it was almost no information. And when I went up to the fire chief at the end of it, and I asked him about it, I said, well, you're saying we have to close this facility because firefighters are getting ill. Can you just please tell me the nature of these illnesses? Because I've never heard of a building, and I've been in real estate for a while, I've never heard of a building that has a mold issue so bad it can't be remediated. And now we're going to be out of an emergency dispatch for years now because of this. So what are these illnesses? He refused to tell me. That is not transparency. We need a council person who's going to be an advocate for getting to the bottom of these things and saving what we have if we can, and if we can't, also reaching out to the community and working with them for an alternative use.
Thank you. I appreciate the observation that some of our neighborhoods feel isolated, and especially in this new 5th district. We have some really large parcels, whether it's the airport or Long Beach Exchange or some large parks that do kind of cordon us off from each other. And so to connect again, post-pandemic, has to be a very intentional effort, in my opinion, to continue to foster dialogues. I will go back to that I am an accessible board member. Most people know where I live. They have my cell phone number. Other board members will attest that if a school outside of District 1 calls and asks me to go to an event, I go. I will put that out there that I'm a person who shows up when invited, so please invite me. But it's about engaging residents. Again, using technology, it's making sure that the phone calls are answered in the office. It's hiring a staff that knows that they need to be responsive to residents first and foremost. I've never had a staff at the school board. We have 5 members and 1 admin assistant. So when people are looking for engagement from their board member, it's me. It's not my staff. So my habit that I will continue is that I will engage personally with folks. I will answer questions. I will have an open door policy. And I will tell you that we won't always agree, but that we will have communication about really important items, and we will work together to make decisions and come up with solutions that are in the best interest of our community. That is my commitment to you.
Community engagement, yes, that is important. As your council person, I'm approachable, I'm likable, and I have different ideas. I'm not a politician, nor am I seeking a political career, so I am here for you, and that's what you really need to understand. But I need you to be there for me. So if we want community engagement, when we do have events, or when let's say we do have Zoom meetings or town halls, I need you to participate. We can have East and West come together, we can meet in the middle, we can all have our own events, and we can share those experiences. But yes, community engagement is key, and I will be that council person that will come out to each and every community. I want your neighborhoods, your neighborhood watch programs up and running again, because that is important. Your police officers need that. Unfortunately, sometimes morale's down a little bit with law enforcement, but I'll tell you right now, they love coming to neighborhood watch programs, and they love coming and speaking and engaging. That is why they became police officers. So, being an active police officer, I would want my police officers to go out in Long Beach and engage with you and find out what the issues are. And I also want everyone to get along and be happy. We all need to live here in Long Beach. It doesn't matter what background we come from, what political party. Just understand your children are growing up here. You have grown up here. And we all want to have a safe and productive city. We all want to be contributing members to society. So let's continue to do that. And as your council person, I will do that.
As I mentioned before, I myself have had a situation when I've tried to call my council person and never got a response. I'm still waiting.
Question number 7. The adoption of SB 9 and 10 by the state has fundamentally changed zoning in single-family neighborhoods. It essentially allows higher density without inputs from communities or even the city. What are your thoughts on SB 9 and 10, and how will you address it as a council member? And Megan goes first.
Thank you. We know that the housing element that was just passed by Sacramento requires Long Beach to come up with about 26,000 more housing per the approved element. And we have to be creative to make that happen. SB 9 and 10 was a result of communities refusing to do their part to provide housing for their residents. As someone who's on the school board, I know very well that the last thing I want Sacramento to do is to tell us how to run our schools. That we need to make good decisions as a local school board so that the state doesn't feel the need to reach in and make that policy for us. They still do it, and we're dealing with some of the repercussions even today of state mandated laws. But as I walk through the neighborhood in the Fifth, while we have predominantly single-family homes, we also have multifamily homes. So I walked a street in a quiet neighborhood that was primarily duplexes and occasional fourplexes in there. There's a back house on my house. We bought our house specifically because after my dad's heart attack and brain injury, he couldn't live on his own. And with 3 young children and my grandma, we needed an opportunity to have a place there. And this that was built before we got there was our way of taking care of our multi-generational household. So SB 9 and 10, in the sense of a property owner deciding to change their property, can accommodate some of those family situations, some of those multi-generational. I have a person who just finished an ADU on their garage over off of Conant and Woodruff. Her daughter's living in it. She was planning on renting it, but her daughter's there, renting it below market. So it is a creative way, but has the potential to get out of hand. I absolutely understand that. But Long Beach has to do its part to create housing. And one of the other examples is even here in Lakewood Village when I was knocking last weekend, someone was concerned because the house across the street that is a single family home with 5 bedrooms is renting to 8 people. So it's the same thing. We're still trying to find housing for people. So going through the city process, the permitting process to make sure that they are safe and taken care of is the best way of moving forward when we have to make those accommodations.
Public safety, homelessness, overdevelopment in our neighborhoods. Those are the 3 issues when I door knock that people talk to me about. They're scared about overdevelopment, and I'll tell you why. I am. I purchased my home in my neighborhood not to have it look like Los Angeles or San Francisco, not to have an apartment complex in between my neighbor's home and my home. I understand what we need to do as Long Beach City Council members, if I get in there, but the idea that we want to turn it into, again, apartment living in between residents, no. ADUs, funny enough, I had an accessory dwelling unit. I had an email not too long ago asking me, what is your position on an ADU? It's very tricky because like Megan said, yes, sometimes people are using that maybe to offset their mortgage because now they can't afford it anymore. They're not working anymore. So these are tricky questions. But again, we need to make sure we hold our city accountable because obviously sometimes the city doesn't make the best decisions. And then it's going to go by the wayside and you're going to be, living in a LA type environment or a San Francisco type environment. So I don't like it. I will definitely discuss with different council members and come up with some sort of comprehensive plan. I do understand the idea. We just have to be careful because it is a slippery slope. Thank you.
I live in Cal Heights, where we have beautiful apartment buildings not far from my home, and they have not devalued my home at all. In fact, the value of my home has gone up recently. These apartments are very tastefully done. They fit in with the decor and the neighborhood. And, I'm very happy with the neighbors that I have there. And most of them are very long-term. As far as ADUs go, I would think of nothing better than to be able to provide an aging parent or a disabled nephew like I have to be able to live with me so I can take care of them. There are people who do rent out their ADUs to their own children because they are priced out. They can't afford rent on their own. So rather than couch surf or be on the streets, their children are living with them. It can be tastefully done. I've knocked on doors where a parcel has 3 beautiful little bungalows. And as long as we as a community say, if it's done logically and intelligently, we should do our part to be able to build these additional units that are so much in need right now. Thank you.
This is a very simple question. The question is, do you want the village to stay the village? Do you want an advocate who is going to defend your quality of life, who is going to defend your Lakewood Village that you've invested in, that you've put your life savings in paying off a mortgage, that you've invested blood, sweat equity, blood, sweat, and tears raising a family, investing in a neighborhood, being part of a neighborhood and a community. Everything that goes into these single-family neighborhoods, and just have it be exploited and destroyed by developers. Because some politicians buy into this political narrative coming out of Sacramento, and these things they call RHNA numbers, RHNA, which are the product of an extremely political and not honest process in which I believe are going to be challenged in litigation. Look, if we have to add some density here in Long Beach, there are places where you can contemplate it in transit-oriented zones, and even then the city will have to add infrastructure, will have to add public safety, because that's never factored in. But here in the 5th District, which is well over 95% single-family zone, both owners and renters, but single-family zone detached homes, quiet, peaceful neighborhoods, we have a right to these communities that we've invested so much in. And we have a right to have someone elected to represent us who will defend them, who will take the steps necessary, who will propose the regulatory ordinance, which is actually provided for under SB 9, and which our council has done nothing to act on, that will join the lawsuit led by Carson and Torrance and Redondo Beach to challenge the constitutionality of this law, because we're a charter city and we're supposed to control zoning locally. And that will also join the effort to have a statewide ballot measure to overturn it. Thank you.
Question number 8. Lakewood Village is surrounded by the city of Lakewood on 3 sides. When we drive into Lakewood, their streets are in excellent condition. Why are Long Beach streets so bad, and what will you do to change it? We're going to start with Janine on this one.
So I'm sorry to hear that your streets are not good. I'm not in there, but I'll tell you right now, once I do get in there, I will make that priority, just like I will public safety. Those are basic needs that community members, it shouldn't be a question, and we shouldn't have that issue. Lakewood shouldn't have better streets than Long Beach. We have a lot of money. Why are streets not being repaired? Honestly, I don't know that answer, but when I am your council person, I'll find out that answer, number 1, and number 2, I will prioritize getting your streets repaired, because that is what you are asking of your city. You have to fix your cars every time you hit a pothole. Now that's more money out of your pocket, and it's just not fair driving down these streets to have it look that way, but then you drive, a couple blocks over, and their streets look beautiful. What are they doing right that we're doing wrong? Well, I'll tell you, once I get in there, I will find out, and I'm gonna do it right for you.
After public safety, this is the second thing I hear from the community. And for somebody who actually drives a lot for a living, I see how badly our roads need to be taken a priority. Thank you.
We see this over and over again. The question is, where is the money going? We have a $400 million backlog of street repair in this city. Where is our tax money going? Measure A, it was supposed to pay for this, and it's not happening. I can't tell you how many stories I hear of people who don't live in Long Beach tell me, but work in Long Beach, and as soon as they cross the city line, driving out of Long Beach home, their cars start driving more smoothly. When they enter Lakewood, when they enter Cypress, when they enter Hawaiian Gardens even. I mean, it's ridiculous. We have the money to pay for these things, but the money is being diverted by the downtown special interests. And Measure A is a perfect example of how we're being deceived over and over again, because we were sold this as a solution, but actually it's a general tax. It's not a special tax to deal with public safety and infrastructure as it was sold to us. It's a general tax that can be used on anything. Why was that done? Because that made it a 50% threshold to pass. And it also meant they didn't have to spend it on the things they promised they would spend it on. So we've got to start getting honest in this city. I am optimistic because I think the residents of this city are waking up to these issues and are ready to tackle them before it's too late.
So the reason our roads aren't great is because it's been decades of underinvestment in our infrastructure. That's true. Measure A is helping with some of that. Currently, I would suggest that we examine and update how the city decides which streets deserve to be paved. Currently, they use the Pavement Management Index, which ranks streets from 0 to 100 based on a nuanced system, but it doesn't take into account the impact a street has on family vehicles, or quality of life for the residents who have to live with that street day in and day out, especially around our schools and parks, because they are traveled by lots of families over and over again. So I would like to do two things. I would like to change the calculation the city uses to grade and repair streets to ensure that there's a focus on communities and neighborhoods. And I want to create a subcommittee of the city council that's dedicated to infrastructure. There are cities across the region that do that. And I would like to see us do that and to look at the innovative technology that those cities are using and bring that here in Long Beach. There are best practices out there that we can learn from. And I think it's critical. So I hear about streets, not sidewalks, obviously in Lakewood Village, because y'all don't have sidewalks. But we also have to take into consideration our old growth trees. So we know when someone says, I want my sidewalk fixed, but don't touch my tree. So how do we live in between wanting to continue to have old growth trees and do infrastructure work? We also have an investment coming with the Biden infrastructure dollars. So this is the perfect opportunity to use those one-time dollars to fix major streets. Because we know that sometimes the city opts to fix more streets that aren't quite as bad than to tackle the really bad streets like Carson that runs the length, as well as Clark over here by the college. I was just on that this morning because they cost more. So taking that infusion of one-time infrastructure dollars to fix some of our worst streets is something that I would advocate for, because that's going to save us money down the line when it comes to repairs in the long run.
We have a rebuttal request.
We have a rebuttal down here.
Did you want to go first, Ian?
Sure. So I wanted to add to my answer, there has been a proposal that we take out a bond on Measure A to do street repair that is really fixing the entire street rather than just slurry sealing the top, which is sort of a Band-Aid solution that doesn't last very long. That's a good concept, except I don't think we can do that with Measure A because, again, Measure A was a general tax. It was not a specific tax that was dedicated for a specific purpose, so you can't take a bond out on it. So we're in this situation now where things are getting worse and worse, and yes, we do have the federal Biden administration infrastructure money coming. And that money is for shovel-ready projects. But because we have been disinvesting, we are not ready to take that money. In most cases, we're going to lose out on a lot of it if we don't get really serious about this really quick.
So just remember what you heard here today. We don't work for Public Works. We don't really know where the money is going. We definitely are not sitting at the dais right now. But I will tell you this, as your council person, I will definitely find out. But just think and listen to what you heard. We're gonna come up with different programs. We're gonna come up with this. Why aren't they doing this now? Why in 2022, 4 no-name recognition candidates are coming up with these supposed ideas? These ideas are here, these programs are here, the money is here. We just need to find out why it's not being used appropriately. And as your council person, I will do that for you.
Okay, question number 9. Just 2 blocks from here, Fred Tate was murdered in Pan Am Park, right in the middle of our neighborhood. That murder was never solved. In a separate incident, a woman was seriously attacked in a home invasion right near there also. This is just a microcosm of Long Beach crime. What will you do to ensure that our district and our city becomes a safe place for all? And Linda goes first.
That is such an unsettling thing to happen in your neighborhood. I can understand how unnerving that can be in your day-to-day life to know that this happens just a few blocks away. It has happened in my neighborhood as well. And it is a community effort, I believe, for us to be able to stay in touch with our department, our peace officers, to have community peace officers that you know and trust. And it also, you know, it really makes for a lot of communication between the city and the neighborhood and the association. There's nothing I can say that will guarantee your safety. Only that I can do as much as I can to be able to get peace officers in your neighborhood to patrol and to make it as safe as possible in that aspect. Thank you.
I think we all know that the Fred Taft murder in the restroom at Pan Am really rocked Lakewood Village. I don't know that that particular murder would have been solved with more resources. It's impossible to know on an individual case-by-case basis. But what I do know is that if we don't restore our police force, these kind of situations are going to happen over and over again. You can't solve complicated investigation murders if you don't have the resources in your police department. And you can't solve these things and prevent crime, especially crime related to gang activity, if you don't have a field anti-gang unit. This is something we used to have in this city. Bill Pearl, the late publisher of LV Report, was banging this drum for years and years and years, ever since we cut that field anti-gang unit. And what was that? That was basically The Wire. If you've ever seen that show, The Wire, the unit in The Wire, where you had a group of officers who were focused on intelligence, figuring out where the crime is, the drug crime, the gangs, how they operate, what are all the connections. And that's how you not only shut them down, but you solve these crimes. When we don't even have the basic resources for a single field anti-gang unit, we're in big trouble in this city. And when we can't field the resources that we even had in the 1990s, we're never going to get back on track to community-oriented policing. We have to make this our top priority because the money is there, it's just being diverted. Our police force has the money, it's under personnel. The money is being mismanaged.
Thank you for the question. First, to the Taft family, my deepest condolences on the loss of your family member. And to that assault survivor, I'm sorry that they lost a sense of peace and safety in their neighborhood. That's important. Crime is up, we know that. The last time we had a forum, I looked at the February crime statistics. The March ones have since come forward. So we know that Part 1 crimes are up 5.4% citywide. In D5, that varies widely. There are two divisions that cover District 5, the East Division and the North Division. It's up 11% in the East Division, and it's down 9% in the North Division. So we know that neighborhood by neighborhood, the needs and trends are different in terms of police enforcement. We need a fully staffed department. We need a fully staffed department, and that takes resources. So we know that we are not fully staffed at this time. We know that we're understaffed by officers and that we have a wave of officers who are eligible for retirement right now, in the same way that we have a wave of teachers. So we need to be prepared by funding it and having academies to replace and to fill the positions that are currently vacant, and be prepared in the future for those new officers to be ready at the time that this wave of officers could retire. And we need them to be well-trained, and we need them to be flexible to respond to the very different needs of different neighborhoods here in District 5. And the council oversees the police department, and it's important that our police department is well-led, that it's held accountable, that there's ongoing training so that our officers are responsive to our community in culturally competent and compassionate ways. We have programs throughout the city, neighborhood walks, meet and greets at coffee stores. We need to continue to do that work. And they need to continue to be transparent. I applaud the new police blotter on the LVPD website, where you can see serious incidences that happened overnight. And that's one way to have transparency and accountability.
All right, here we go. I'm going to try to be as truthful as I can without scaring you. Your city officials, some, unfortunately, do not support law enforcement. How can I say that? Well, let's see. They have threatened to fire a few over the vaccine mandates. Who's that helping? Nobody. Is this really about your public safety, or is this about politics? Let's understand the big picture here. There's a lot of different things in politics that are going to affect your everyday life. Your city officials need to stand up to that. They need to say, no, enough is enough. Listen, the community members need the police. We need to make sure they're on your streets. They're doing their job. That's what they want to do. I talk to Long Beach police officers all the time. Their morale level is low because they don't feel supported. And at times when they do, there's a little high, well then boom, they get knocked back down again. Understand, yes, we need to hire more police, we need to train them, but we also need to support them, stop firing them. Respect your first responders. We're here to help you. Fire, teachers, nurses, doctors, police officers, we're all here to help you. Let's stop playing politics with your life and our lives as well, because we want to do what we signed up to do, and that's protect and serve. Every community member has been victim in some way, shape, or form, and they need to understand it's going to affect your future, your children's future. Just make the right decision and understand that we need to work together and make sure that the police are supported, you have a relationship with them, because that's what they want. They want to have a relationship. Most of them live near here or in the city. They want to be a part of this community. Support them, stand up for them. Thank you.
Question number 10. Lakewood Village is home to 2 business triangles, and Long Beach Exchange is very close by. What will you do to support local businesses and ensure that they are able to prosper? And we're going to start with Ian on this one.
Well, I appreciate this question. I am a small business owner, the only small business owner on this stage running. I know what it's like to struggle in small business. I'm a 3rd-generation rental property owner. I know what it's like to face really oppressive regulations, which we do in the city of LA, which basically say to you as a small business person that you're not valued, that we're going to throw up every obstacle we possibly can in your path. And if you decide to quit the business, that's okay with us, because we really prefer the big corporate guys who are powerful, who pay for campaigns, who make donations. You, the little guy, the hard-working person who is carrying debt, paying off a mortgage in my business, or a business financing, who struggles every day, who bears the risk. You know, the risk, it's financial, but it's also emotional. It takes such a toll on people, the stress load. And these are the people that are making our communities what they are. Interesting, dynamic, different, not just a pedestrian, another chain fast food place or store. A place where every dollar that you spend goes into the salaries of people who live locally, goes right back into the economy, or goes into that narrow profit margin of the business owner who lives locally, and it goes right back into the economy. So what we need is to really strengthen our business associations in this city. I've proposed a strategic plan that will provide a dedicated revenue stream to support all these associations, the ones that are still strong, like BKBIA, but which are facing a cliff. And they're all really facing a cliff because of the loss of RDA money. And then also to build business associations in corridors that don't have one. So Northway is great, but we need all our business corridors to be covered by these associations, which are the core of the community.
I think one of the things that we can do. I think one of the things that we can do to support businesses, both large and small, but especially our small business corridors, is to fully staff our economic development department. So during the pandemic, for various reasons, the economic development department at one point was only staffed to 60%. So when small business owners who were struggling were trying to get through the pandemic, it was really difficult to get a hold of somebody. So making sure the city is doing its job and the civil service is doing its job and making sure we're hiring quality people who can support small businesses is critical so that they have the resources, because we have great programs at their fingertips and we can actually get them to them. There is a council office that has a business liaison specifically in their office, and I would look to do the same thing. So one of my staff members would be dedicated to working specifically with the businesses. They would handle other constituent issues as well, but they would be the main liaison to our business departments in the city and our small business owners, as well as our larger business owners, like you said, Long Beach Exchange, which just changed ownership. It's getting to know that new owner. What is their vision? We knew what the vision of the folks who built that was, but has that changed? And so has someone talked to that new property owner, and what are their plans to continue to fill it up and to continue to make it successful in the long term? It's about relationship building. It's about having the people who know how to do that work and who are dedicated to do that work. We've also been really innovative in the pandemic of how we deliver services within the city, and efficiencies and money-saving things that can help people do their job better. So those are the ways that the practical ways that I think we can support small businesses and large businesses. It's based on relationship, it's based on having the staff that is appropriate to support businesses, and someone specific in my office as your council member to help do that work and be a resource for business owners.
What an exciting time as a small business owner to open a business, to get it up and running, and then one little regulation throws you off track. There goes some more money, some red tape again, some more money, and now you're in debt, excited that you started your small business, but you can't keep it going. Why? The city puts up some roadblocks. Like Megan said, there's not enough personnel maybe to handle your requests, or they're not educated enough. One person tells you one thing, another person tells you something else. I'm sure some of you have seen the video from Bixby Knowles. They had the Red Cup conversations. Aaron Blackburn and John Mascara had a business, a small business. Well, it comes back full circle because they said public safety was a huge issue for them. Homelessness in front of their business. A heroin addict sitting in front of their small business, injecting themselves. You really think a customer's gonna wanna come inside and enjoy a dinner, let's say, at that business if it's a restaurant? They're not. But the city needs to address all of that, the regulations, the red tape, the public safety portion of it. We need to work together, and we need to make sure that these small business owners are represented, their concerns are not being ignored. As your council person, I will make sure to be that representative. I will come out to you. If you're having an issue, it shouldn't be that difficult to try to cut through that red tape. I will be accessible.
Okay, next question. You are the new council person for District 5. What are your top 3 priorities on day 1? And Megan goes first.
Thank you. My first priority is to connect our communities, to talk about this new District 5, to make sure we're communicating who we are and that we belong to each other and that we have a stake in each other's success. We also have to look closely at housing and homelessness. So December is a long time away. The council will make many decisions between now and then regarding either tiny homes. I think there is an ADU item on the agenda even tonight for council. So I will stay abreast, and I will continue to do the work to make sure we're providing services to get those who are unhoused into temporary housing and the services that they require. I will also work with our police department to address rising crime, to engage with them so that they are engaging with our community at a larger level. We know that the crime increase is not specific to Long Beach. We know it's not just specific to LA County or California. It is a national issue that we need to pay close attention to and work closely with our new leadership at the police department, with the support of our officers, to do that work in the streets. But that also understands that not every crime issue needs an officer response. It may need someone to come alongside who's a social worker or a mental health worker out of the health department to help support the work of our officers so that they aren't responsible for handling situations that they were never trained to handle, and that we're giving them the support with trained and qualified folks to augment the service that police are giving to us and providing services to those who most need it.
Public safety, obviously, not a shock answer, correct? Because I am in law enforcement. I'm very, very happy to know that I will be able to contribute that to this council. There will not be anyone else sitting here that has law enforcement experience. So I can bring that to the table and I can make sure we address it. We speak with the chief of police. Again, coming from law enforcement, I can have that rapport with him and have that conversation, the truth. We can share it with the constituents and the community members if we need something else. But we definitely need that support. We need those officers on the street. We need them to engage. Yes, we do need them to have the training and the resources. We have all of that, but they need to know that they are supported. Homelessness, of course. It comes back to public safety. We need to address the homeless issue. We need to get them off the street and give them the resources that are necessary to them, depending on their backstory. Because again, they come back out, they commit a crime, or they're just seeking food, and then they have to commit the crime. Well, that all becomes part of this whole public safety. So, public safety, homelessness, and then transparency of the budget. Where is your money going? It's my first time running for office. You have been here a long time. You know this isn't very complex. Your money is not being handled properly. As your council person, I will find out why. Thank you.
Okay, the top three issues that I will focus on, one is public safety, and under that comes homelessness and community policing, which I find really important, next is workers' rights and the environment. Those are my three top issues. Under public safety, as I mentioned, homelessness, which right now the Mayor's Council is asking for 3 years of funding from the state of California so they can plan ahead of time and get some really results-driven programs to take care of this issue or to work on this issue. Housing falls into public safety. If you're not housed, do you feel safe on the streets? Of course not. Workers' rights, I believe workers are really since COVID, it's been a new social order in the sense that so many people are working from home and they're understanding the productivity that can actually be done from home. The productivity is essential to any company, and when they are at times in an office where they're not valued, where they're overworked, where they're not respected, it's important that they speak up. So it's very important that people who want to unionize are allowed to do so without intimidation. And the environment. The environment is something that affects us all. That could also go under public safety, but on its own, it's a huge issue to tackle. We are under the grips of big oil in this city, and people are cancer-ridden because of the environment. People are struggling to breathe, have asthma and respiratory problems, and that is something that we should all be concerned about. Thank you.
Number one would clearly be public safety, which means restoring our force to the over 1,000 officer level that we once had and getting back on track to having the resources for community policing. But yes, it does also include dealing seriously with the homelessness crisis, because it's getting to the point where people do not feel safe in their neighborhoods, in their alleys. I had an incident where someone was in my alley and he was clearly high on drugs, clearly homeless with a shopping cart, tapping on buildings with a stick, and I called the police, and it took them over 2 hours to respond on a non-emergency call. So we have to get serious about this crisis. Number two, SB 9, overdevelopment. I will be your advocate. I will lead the charge on the regulatory ordinance so that there are at least standards for these developers, parking, beautification, other things, so it's not a complete developer exploitation free-for-all. And number three, we need a complete top-to-bottom audit of this city. All the finances, We need an outside firm. First of all, we need a new city auditor in the form of Dan Miles, who's a great guy. But what we really need is a nationally recognized firm to work hopefully with that new city auditor, analyze every department, every position, have them justified, compare them to what we spend in other cities, what we're spending in other cities, and what are the performance outcomes, so we know whether we're getting a return on our dollar. And that way we'll have the resources to do the things we need, like repairing our streets, building parks, fixing parks, and dealing with the other issues which are really starting to threaten our quality of life.
We're now coming to a close of our forum, so we're going to be going to closing statements from each candidate. They'll have 3 minutes, and there's no rebuttals allowed for this particular time frame. So 3 minutes and no rebuttals. And we're going to be starting with Janine.
My name is Ian Patton. I am an ordinary resident who went through the same process that a lot of folks go through when they become community activists. At a certain point, your eyes are opened to what really goes on. You don't start out that way. You start out just as an ordinary person trying to live your life, and you shouldn't have to be aware of these things. Your city should be run with your tax dollars in a professional, competent manner, and you shouldn't have to take time out of your life to become an expert on municipal government. But it's getting to the point where more and more of us feel that we have to be, and I certainly went through that process. My eyes were opened by developments like Measure A, when I realized that City Hall was not being honest with us. And they were, after the passage of Measure A, not being honest with the usage of our tax dollars. What I realized is that basically, if you're a resident of Long Beach, if you're a taxpayer in Long Beach, it's kind of like being a user of Facebook. If you're a user of Facebook, you may think you're the customer. You're not. You're the product. You're being sold to the real customers, who are the advertisers. In Long Beach, you're a resident, you're a taxpayer, you think you're the customer. And then at a certain point, you realize you're not. Your tax dollars are the product being sold to powerful special interests, both corporate and labor, downtown, that have controlled the city for so long, diverted that money. And you wonder why our streets are getting worse. Our parks, our air quality, everything seems to be worse than it was when I was a young person in this city growing up. It's really not a mystery. We have to fix it. We need change. There is time to get back on course, but we need a change agent to get us back on course. In every election, there's always a machine candidate chosen by the political machine for you. The selection is not yours from their point of view. The election is a formality as far as they're concerned. You are expected to vote a certain way, and you are presented a laundry list of endorsements and everything that the political system does, which is basically a mutual protection society, and you're not supposed to worry about how things work. But I think we're at a point in this city where people are fed up with that system. People do not want more of the same. People want change. But if you do want more of the same, if you want the highest taxes, if you want the worst return on your tax dollar, if you want continued poor air quality, poor streets, poor parks, small businesses being mistreated, closing, people beginning to vote with their feet and leave our communities, you know who to vote for in this election. But if you want change, I ask for your vote.
I want to thank the neighborhood, the Lakewood Village Neighborhood Association for hosting tonight, and all of you for taking your time out during the week to be with us. If you had asked me a decade ago if I'd be sitting in front of you as a candidate for city council, I would have laughed. My work was always in the community, whether it's been fostering puppies in my home, serving on multiple PTAs, helping our schools become the first National Green Ribbon status winners, or serving on boards of our local nonprofits. But it was that foundation of community involvement that gave me the opportunity to step up and run for school board in 2014. And over the past 8 years, I'm the only person on this ballot that has had to make tough decisions that impact the future of our community, and done so with our family, taxpayers, and stakeholders at the forefront of those decisions. For those who may not realize it, LBUSD is the 4th largest school district in the state of California. It is also Long Beach's largest individual employer and largest landowner, with an operational budget of $1.2 billion. I have led in a fiscally sound way in both lean and surplus budget times. Serving as a member of City Council is a serious responsibility, and one that requires someone who will build the consensus to actually achieve the plans that we talk about. Let's not forget, it takes 5 votes for a single council member to get their priorities and initiatives passed at the dais. And once again, I'm the only one on this stage with the experience and the relationships to be successful for our collective priorities. This race is about you and the future of our District 5 and the city of Long Beach. While there are those who prefer to point out where others have failed or do not know about the pressing issues currently facing our district, I have always focused on the situations and the needs in front of us, collaborating with others to find solutions and moving the work forward. This race is about electing someone with the experience, the skill set, and the temperament to solve tough issues. That's why, when measured up against this field, I have the support from every corner of the political and ideological spectrum. From the Chamber of Commerce, former LA Supervisor Don Kanabe, and our Long Beach police officers, to leaders like Congressman Alan Lowenthal, the LA County Federation of Labor, and Supervisor Janice Hahn. And that is because my record of accomplishment and collaboration stands on its own merit, because it has been focused on bringing people together, coming up with solutions, and not tearing each other down when we may disagree on things. As the mom of young adults and a school board member who gets to see the growth and accomplishment of young people in this community every day, I am more determined than ever to leave this world and our community better than I found it for this extraordinary group of young people who are coming after us. I thank you for your time tonight. I look forward to earning your vote. You can get my bio and my list of those endorsements at the door and visit our website, and I'll give you a card with my cell phone number on it if you have any questions. Thank you again for your time tonight.